Introducing the ultimate seat cover, Tiger Tough. Proudly made in the US of A, waterproof and backed by an unconditional warranty. Yes, you heard it right. 2 years on vehicles and a lifetime guarantee on heavy equipment. They have you covered for manufacturer defects, normal wear and tear, and even those oh shit moments. Tiger Tough covers are meticulously crafted for a perfect fit with over 30,000 pre-fit designs, ensuring they stay in place without any shifting or sliding. Plus, they're even machine washable. Don't settle for less. Get a seat cover today that's built to last. Order today at tigertough.com/dirt. Get a free logo embroidery on your first order if you use the code DIRTBAG at checkout. Once received, show us your new badass seat covers with your logo and tag us. Experience durability and quality with Tiger Tough seat covers. Toughness guaranteed.
What's up, you dirtbags? My name is Luke Egerbrotten, and we are back in studio with my man, Luke Payne. How we doing, dude?
Cheers, brother. Good. How are you doing tonight? Happy Wednesday to you. We actually, not to jump in front of you, but today is a dual podcast day for both of us. You had one earlier today, and so did I. And now we're back at it tonight.
Yeah, man. So because you were on the Con Expo podcast with Mr. Taylor White, and then I was on the Construction MFers podcast with Scott Pieper. So
hell yeah,
that was a good time. How did yours end up going?
It was really fun. I mean, Taylor and I, he's such a cool guy, right? You can have just the most simple conversation and he's just engaged. He's there. Like he's intrigued on what you're talking about. So it just makes a conversation flow so easily. I mean, we talked about business, what it takes to be a business owner. The shit that business owners go through. We talked about society norms and how things are changing. Really fun podcast. So how about you and Scott?
It was good. Scott is, no surprise, dialed in. He had notes for me. He had potential questions. He had potential rabbit holes we can go down. But he's just such a great podcast host because I was telling you this off the air here. He is a great podcast host because when he starts to feel somebody going down a rabbit hole, he doesn't just go to the next question. He digs further. And that's one of my favorite things about podcasts is when the host can really dive in below surface level and like, okay, let's stop there. Let's talk about that more. Let's unpack this. And I feel like he just did such a great job of leading that conversation, that podcast. And I think by the time this episode comes out, that episode will already be out. So go check it out. It's Construction MFers, and Scott Pieper is the host. And he was our Dirtbags University speaker for anyone that was on there. So he's a stud.
Yep. He is a very smart guy, so I'm anxious to go and listen to that one. So
yeah, and then got a new beverage here we're trying out. So Bad
Birdie juice, huh?
Yeah. So the golf brand Bad Birdie, they did like this collaboration with Four Peaks Brewing here in Arizona, and it's marketed as a juicy golden ale, but it's not bad. I'm liking it.
You know, Luke, that drink just fits you well. I don't know if people aren't watching the YouTube right now. It just looks like a Luke Egerbrotten drink. So, I'm just having the trusty Busch Light tonight. I had enough calories. I've been counting my macros and my calories pretty steadily. And after dinner, I had like 269 calories left. So I'm like, I'm having a beer tonight.
Yeah, because what's in a beer, like 180 or 120 or something?
No, 12-ounce Busch Light is 9. No, I think it's like 110.
Oh, you're good for a few then.
You're good for a few.
Cool. Well, dude, without further ado, I know we have a super exciting podcast, a bit different, which I'm very excited about.
I have a different angle tonight. Yep.
Yeah, and that's what we've been wanting to do is how can we continue to deliver value with the guests that we bring on? So super excited. We're going to take more of an equipment side of this and a sales side. So we've got the man, Ryan Mueller, in studio from General, and General's all over the Midwest, I believe, right?
Yeah, we've got 9 stores in the upper Midwest and 2 in Canada.
Hell yeah.
Good stuff.
Yep. Ryan's our equipment salesman out of Fargo. I mean, I'm sure if we were in South Dakota, he probably would be too. The man's all over. I remember one morning I passed him going to Bismarck and I took a picture of him and I said, I'll race you. And he's like, I'm loaded up with parts. He'd probably win. So
heading out in the field.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, super exciting. Luke and I were talking about how we can bring somebody on to just get a different perspective. And, a lot of questions came in earlier as far as like equipment, buying, renting. what is the preferred manufacturer? And I think we all kind of know the answer to that. It isn't the manufacturer, but I think it's the dealer support and honestly the person behind the machinery. And just giving a hats off to Ryan. Luke, you wouldn't believe some of the stories about what Ryan did for us this year, bent over completely backwards for us. So again, just huge appreciation on our end, but we're just wanting to dive in a little bit, and get a little bit through your lens. Luke, I know you had some questions on, the machines or no, before we do to that, we should let Ryan give us a little background on himself. Sorry, Ryan.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So I've been at General Equipment since 99. I got my first paycheck. Started pushing brooms in the shop. We used to burn the shop. We used to heat it with an oil furnace. So I was tasked with cleaning that out and went to college at NDSU and worked part-time in the shop. And then I got on full-time at General in 2007, I believe, 2008. And started out.
Did it take you that long to graduate college? Just curious.
5 years.
There you go.
I had a few years in high school. I worked there too, but yeah, 5 years. I was on the 5-year plan.
Good for you. Good. That's pretty typical for NDSU, I feel like.
Yeah, especially business.
But hell yeah. What did you graduate in? Was it a business
admin?
Okay.
Business admin. Yep.
Cool.
And then got on full time in the parts department. We opened a store down in Shakopee, Minnesota, and I went down there to get the parts department kind of going, and ended up moving back to Fargo, still in the parts department. And then I got into our GPS side. 2013 is when Komatsu went full on with the eye machines. So I was in charge of that program until I got into sales. So kind of bounced around, but in the company for a while.
Cool. What was, obviously sales, I would assume, is probably the most exciting position there. But, are there any fun part stories where you're like, God, I wish I could, maybe be doing that again, or not really?
Not really. The GPS stuff was my favorite because you're in the field working with the guys hands on, where the sales side, you're kind of more in the office, but you're still trying to get in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So the parts thing, managing inventory and keeping stuff on the shelves and that kind of stuff. So
cool.
Yeah, Ryan, on the GPS side, like you were just talking about, would that be like sell, help them install, do the walk around like in the field, or like what was your job with the GPS?
So the eye machines in particular that Komatsu makes are integrated GPS systems. So they come already on the machine from the factory. So we had to set them up and calibrate them. And then it's a big undertaking for the customer to understand what it takes to keep them going. Mm-hmm. So I was involved from the start of sell, basically, with showing them what's required of the machine and what they need to be ready to take on.
Was it hard when like GPS first came out? Because you said what, 2010, 2011?
2013, but I'm guessing, I mean, machine control has been around since the 90s, just it hasn't come on machines ready to go. Yeah. So that was a big step for any manufacturer, and it was a big task. Yeah, it was a learning curve for everybody. But they're very good at testing equipment out before it gets to the dirt. They wouldn't rush it to market. So when we got the machines, they were pretty well ready to rock. It's just training the customer.
That's my question. Was it hard to be, to go to somebody and be like, hey, you're going to want this machine that's fully GPS? And they, was there a lot of pushback? Because knowing some of the guys around just this area, I could have just seen a lot of pushback coming from them. Like, we don't fucking need that. My operators are way too good for that. What was that transition like?
It was very difficult. To be honest with you, it was more difficult getting the files out of the engineering companies than it was getting the customers to understand they needed it. You could set the machine and pull a slope, and the customer's like, I need that. But then to get the files on the jobs that they already bid and were awarded, that was the task. So as a dealership, we would go into the meetings with customers and basically get the models out of the engineering company with the customer, and then say, have faith in us, we'll get this machine to do what it's supposed to do. And that's where we started. And now it's an email and you have all the files you need.
Yeah. It's definitely really changed on how things operate. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Yep. It was a lot, but it's for the better, and it's just a learning curve like anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, how, like with GPS and grade control, like between the different brands, how much does the price fluctuate? Like, do you only work with certain brands, or how does that piece work?
So that was the cool thing about Komatsu is they hired a couple of the top salesmen from Trimble
Mm,
to come over and help design these machines. So they did all the back legwork on figuring out how we can connect to the Trimble systems. And to this day, we can run off, basically we can show up to a job site, run off any Leica, Trimble or TopCon system with any of our eye machines. So
That's cool.
it's software things, but they had it all figured out at Komatsu before we got into it. So
yeah. And then if we can just dive into some numbers here, like if somebody has no idea what GPS and grade control costs, like what would a typical setup cost? Like, is it per machine? How does all that work?
yeah, so typically you need one base station and rover to run your site. So you can run 30 machines off of one base and rover kit, but you got to have one of those. So those are in that 40 to $45,000 range. For an indicate GPS system, which would be your visuals of the job site, so there's no autos on the machine. Those are around 50,000, and then if you throw the autos in, you're up to about 80.
Okay. And when you say autos, what does that mean?
So it runs the hydraulics of the machine, so it actually takes over the function of it.
Gotcha.
So that adds quite a bit because you're tying into pumps and valves and running different types of sensors. So there's quite a difference in running it in full auto versus just a visual. I guess the way you can think of it is if you're running it with an indicate, we call it, you're looking more at the monitor and your what you're trying to build. So you're not paying attention to what you're digging versus if you flip it in autos, you're naturally going to start looking more to what you're digging instead of your screen so much.
Mm.
I will
So-
say that it is super handy. Really cool system. We've got 2 machines now, 2 hose that have it now, and the guys love them.
It's pretty amazing. They make art, really.
They do. They do. Yeah, great point. They do make art. Yeah, no, really cool. And now, like when people call or people call you or whoever the other sales guys, I would assume it's more geared towards wanting eye machines compared to not in today's world.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, we order probably 60% eye machines to the standard.
Okay.
No.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Diving into a little bit on the Komatsu side. So I feel, I'm sure you know this too, but ever since like COVID, I remember when you could go into a dealership and be like, "Hey, I want a demo. Give me a demo for a couple days." Obviously, that's not really a thing anymore. So if you're trying to get somebody out of, who's your biggest competitor in the excavator space?
Caterpillar.
Cat. Say you're trying to get somebody out of a cat machine. What's the benefits of going to Komatsu versus cat? What are, where's your balance wheel at?
Well, I guess from a sales standpoint, we pride in our machines getting built here in the States. They're built down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a big thing. And then when you really start looking at the actual machine itself, there's some pros and cons to how it's manufactured. But to be honest with you, everybody builds pretty darn good stuff nowadays across the whole line. And it comes down to that support piece where it's uptime, and realistically up here, we really don't have but 6, 7, 8 months on a normal year to do everything. So it's selling yourself, it's selling your dealership, and it's selling the product, but it's a team effort. And to be honest with you, it's a dealership effort. It's not just me trying to sell this one machine. So
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. And would you say that are there brands that complement certain brands? Like, for example, if we're talking like Komatsu, if you're not going to go with Komatsu, go with Hitachi or JCB, or like, are there certain brands that complement your main brands maybe?
yeah, there's different tiers of machines, and they all kind of, the John Deere's, the Cats, the Komatsus are kind of up at the top. And then now you've got these Sanis coming in from China, and you've got, all these Doosan's and all these other brands, but it's just like anything. You can get the first sale on a price deal, but at the end of the day, it's is it gonna last? Are you standing behind it? Is it gonna be a second owner machine? That's where the selling comes in. So,
Yeah. I like how
Yeah.
you said you sell as a dealership and not just as one person.
oh, absolutely. You have to have that as I mean, that's what makes these things go. It's not an individual task anymore. It's this is what we can do for you and this is what we offer.
How do you get
That's
everyone?
it.
How do you get everyone on that same page?
To be honest with you, there's a really big passion at our dealership in particular because it's family owned, and all of the family and all of the kids from the owners that started the company are still at the store.
Mhm.
And they take pride in their, Matt's rolling stock president, Donnie's aggregate. Everybody has their own area and they stay in those areas, and they just really work their hardest in those particular areas. So that trickles down into their people that they're hiring for their certain parts of the company, and it's just instilled in them, and it's a passion everybody has. I mean, it's a lot of them have been there for a lot of years. If you look at all the salesmen in the state of North Dakota, they've been at General, I would say at least as long, if not longer than I have, 15, 20, 25 years. And they've all started in departments in the shop and worked their way up, and now they're sales guys.
No, that's cool.
So
Do you have
that's
to,
pretty rare.
Yeah, that is rare. Do you have to do, do you have to start in like parts or service before you can get to that sales position, or does it kind of depend on, knowledge base and who you know?
It's not so much, actually, it's really not knowledge at all. It's the type of person you are and how you fit with the group.
Yeah.
Because the equipment piece of it, you can always teach and you can learn, but it really comes down to your personality and how you handle stress. Because when you get the phone, you got to answer it if you want to make any sales. So that's really what it amounts to, is how you are with people and answer your phone, and a driven guy,
100%.
Yeah. Luke, how long have you and Ryan been working together, or how did that start out?
It's a good question. I think Ryan, I don't even know how I got your number, but I remember I needed a dozer for one of our projects that we were doing a couple houses in Horace, and Cat didn't have anything, RDO didn't have anything, and I again, I don't know how I got Ryan's number, but I was like, hey man, need a dozer, what do you got? And he's like, oh, I got a 51, I'll bring it to you, or I'll drop it out there. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, I'll have it there tomorrow. I don't know, we kept it for like a week. And then I remember he called me. He's like, what do you think of it? And I was like, fucking guys, loved it. Thanks, man. Okay, yeah, great. And then I think that happened like 2 or 3 more times. And he's always like, yeah, what do you need? Yep, no problem. Drop it off. No problem. So that's how our relationship started. And then this last year just really intensified with kind of the needs of the company. And yeah, he was always there for us. So.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate all that. I mean, you got to be flexible with customers. To get business, you have to be willing to give up, free time, and you want to, if you want to buy a pickup, you're going to go run it before you buy it. So that's our mentality at General, is give it a try.
It's a lot of trust. Sorry, Luke.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trust that you put in customers, I feel like. I don't know if I would necessarily, because back in 2018, I was a 22-year-old kid. If I had a 22-year-old kid calling me asking for this $250,000 dozer, I'd probably be like, whoa, man, we should probably get you like associated, or like make sure, you can afford this if something happens type thing. So kudos to you guys. But how do you, where does that line go? Like if somebody's just starting out and they need machinery, like what are some vetting things that you do? Or is it all just like, hey, it's a handshake deal, I trust you, don't abuse it type thing?
It's kind of a combination of both. On the rental side of things, it's not like you got to go do credit checks and all that. I mean, on the rental side, if you're going to rent a dozer for a month, it is what it is. And I guess what I always try and do is I try and get with the customer and ask him what his job is, to kind of get an idea what he's going to use it for, and then make sure they're getting the right machine. That's a big question. You'll ask a guy, I need an excavator. Okay, well, what are you doing with it? What are you putting in, 18-inch main? Are you going to be 25 feet down? Are you going to be 15? That tells me a lot about what you really need. And if you're asking me the right questions, I'm like, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. So that's a big vetting thing for me personally. But when we do the rental contracts, they got the insurance stuff on there and all that.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah. So the guys that don't fill that out, it's like, well, maybe, but It's trusting a guy by, you can tell when you're talking to him. I mean, so that's how we've done business. We've been flexible and it's worked. So
I'm sure you get really good at reading people after a while.
yeah, it gets that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the fun in it. That's why I like to do it. I like doing this stuff.
Yeah. I
Do
feel
you
like
have
you
any
can,
like horror stories of like really, really bad client? You don't have to name names, but like any situations where you're like, fuck, I never want to go through that again.
I've been pretty fortunate. The salesman that covers Minnesota, not so much. He had an excavator on a sod, like a sod farm or something, and it ended up getting sunk underwater.
Oh, no.
And
Was that a rental?
it was a rental. Well, he was going to buy it, but he did have, I think he had the right insurance on it, but they were fighting forever. And
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah.
Oops, sorry to that guy.
Yeah, right. But then, so you know what? I just thought of this. I did have one that went underwater, but the problem was I didn't have one to resell them, so I had to sell them a different brand.
Shoot. But
Anyway.
was that just an availability thing at the time? You're like, I don't have
Right.
this. I can get you into this.
Right. Yeah.
Was that a local guy?
Valley City.
Okay. I don't know anybody from Valley City, so hell yeah. Luke, I'm sorry I cut you off probably 2 or 3 times there.
no, you're good.
And I'm probably talking too much too, so I don't know.
We love
No,
it. Keep rambling.
That's what we want, man.
Okay,
yeah, and I was
good.
gonna say too, with just as you get to know people too, you probably start to spot these red flags that come up. You're like, yeah, this guy's just abusing this relationship or is trying to walk over me, and that's not gonna happen. But kind of where I wanted to go with that as well is, where is the market right now for equipment? Are there more buyers? Are there more sellers? Like, how are the rates? Like, where is the market at currently?
So finance wise, I would say, well, from a Komatsu standpoint, the rates are not, everybody got used to the 0 for 48 before this whole COVID thing happened. So the assumption was I was going to go buy a machine and get 0% interest. And that's just not the case anymore. We've been able to, Komatsu, having said that they do their own banking, they've got the rates very, very competitive. And I guess what I've been having happen is a lot of guys are bidding work, and that's when they're getting numbers on machines. So the time of year that it is now, we're doing a lot of quoting.
Yeah.
And a big portion of our business to get customers into machines is do the rent to own option. So they'll take the piece of equipment out for 3 months and then they'll convert it into a purchase at that point. So I guess, dealer equipment wise, everybody's got iron now because people built it up and now it's all back in everybody's yard. So it's getting really tough to sell iron right now. I'm not gonna lie. We've lost in the last week, I think we've lost 4 machines due to price, and that's not always, because you don't know the customer, for example, but these were good customers that bought because it was cheaper. So
what machines were they?
336 I lost to a 210, and we lost Hitachi out west
okay.
on a 490 size.
It's mainly excavators right now.
Yeah, it's pretty much excavators. So the Komatsu dozers have been our strong suit and still continue to be that. So we haven't really lost a lot of that leg, but the excavator market's going to get tough. You've got these Sannies of the world's coming in now. You've got Doosan, they're coming in pretty strong. So there's a lot of people bringing an excavator to the market, and they're cheap, but like I said, when you get one sold, it's the second one's not so tough. So
yeah. The RPO, or the lease to own option or rent to own option, is that like a general base thing, or is that like a Komatsu thing? Like, hey, this is an option too, because I feel like that helps maybe when times are a little bit tougher for companies, to where maybe they can't come up with 10-20% right at the time to buy the machine, but they still need it, but then they can get their equity through rentals. When did that come about?
So that's been a thing for general equipment for years. That is a general equipment option, and it's exactly what you said. It's to get a customer in a machine. If he's on the fence about what to do, he can at least try it and say, yeah, this is what I need. Now I can take this thing and buy it. And the reason we're able to do that is we don't run separate sales and rental fleets like all the competition does. So if you basically you have to know up front what you're going to do with that machine, because you're either going to rent it or you're going to buy it. We don't do that. We have our whole fleet is as one. So our aggregate pieces, our cranes, everything you can take out as on an RPO.
Cool.
So,
Do other dealerships do that you know of? Like, has that become more a thing, with
No.
the side, or not really?
No, we haven't run into that. You said that a lot of guys say that's a nice feature, because we get that compliment a lot, but that's definitely a general equipment thing.
Oh,
But there again, we carry the interest for the 3 months.
Yep.
So if you guys decide you want to convert it in 4 months, well, then that's when
the interest
at
occurs.
that point you pay the interest plus prime on whatever you're buying there.
Yep.
So that's where they get you to convert it in 90 days.
Cool. So for anybody listening, because I would assume you guys have, call them your servicing districts, right? Or territories. Where do your territories lie? So say somebody is listening, they're like, oh, fuck, I didn't know that was a thing. I'm going to go to my general equipment dealer, or, hey, I'm from Texas, I'm going to call Ryan up from Fargo. Where does that line kind of cross in the map of the United States?
So we go from North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. And then we got Winnipeg and Regina, Saskatchewan. So we've got those territories, but we're Komatsu in North Dakota only. And then we've got Hitachi in South Dakota and Minnesota. But we multi-train all of our techs. So a little bit about General is they got with Komatsu, and they started a Komatsu only diesel program down in Wapaton. And it's at NDSCS. And our techs come out of there ready to rock and roll on Komatsu specific machines. But we cross train them. If they want to go to Sioux Falls and work, we cross train them onto the Hitachi line, and they can work on anything. It's cool. We all work together. So
that was a program you said built by General, like a diesel tech. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So Don Schilling was one of the owners of General Equipment. That was his lifelong dream, was to have a Komatsu specific training diesel program. And he got with Komatsu, and Komatsu provides the school with the equipment to train on. And it's a 2-year program paid for by General, and you got to commit to our company. I think it's for 3 years when they're done, but it was set up just for that purpose. So I think it's 15 techs a year we have to keep in that to keep it going. And so
you guys are never really short on techs.
Not really.
You could probably always add more, but 15 techs per, the 3 years of every year, that adds up to be a lot.
It is. Yep. I think we run 75 guys out of Fargo alone. So we have a lot of techs.
All right, you dirtbags, we're going to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors, Lambert Insurance Services. If you know Luke and I, we started this podcast to provide value to the construction industry. When we went to seek out an insurance company to work with, there's not a whole lot that are specific to the industry, and we really didn't want to work with a generalist agency, so we kind of put that on the back burner. Then we got to meet Sam Lambert. Sam is a fellow dirtbag himself. He's been in the industry for a long time, but he also started his insurance company in 2008 specifically for construction companies. So when we had that conversation, we knew that this would be the perfect match. So we started working with him, and he's been incredible. He leads first. He wants to be a resource first and an insurance agency second. They can help with provide general liability, workers' comp, commercial truck insurance, insurance for equipment, and so many more different avenues that he can provide coverage for. The great part about it is, they're licensed in most states, and they always quote through multiple companies,
including Progressive Commercial Insurance.
So that's how you can get a competitive rate. And even better, Sam, he's the owner. He wanted to provide his cell number just so if you have any questions, specifically from the dirtbags, you can always text him, give him a call, ask to compare plans, or just ask, what his rates would be, and then he can help direct you to the right place or answer your question from there. His number is 385-204-5799, or you can reach them at their website, which is lambert-ins.com. So reach out to him if you have any insurance questions. We're very excited about this partnership. Sam is an awesome guy, and we're just excited to continue providing value for all you dirtbags. So thank you, Lambert Insurance. Give him a text, shoot him a call, let him know that you're fans of the Dirtbags podcast. Let's get back to it.
Cool. is that kind of standard throughout? Is that, so two questions there. That program, is that only at NDSCS? Or is there other schools that you're like, hey, we could set that up if we wanted to, but this is one that is just closest to us?
I don't really know why they did NDSCS, but that is the only Komatsu specific one.
Okay.
We get guys out of local colleges too that aren't just with that program, but that's the only Komatsu one.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Cool. And I would assume, so other dealerships is, which one's your biggest hub? I would assume Fargo, if you're running 75 guys out of, is probably your main, and then
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the start of the whole company, was Fargo, and then they branched to Minot and Bismarck, and then we've got a store in Williston too. So North Dakota is kind of where we started, and then we branched out from there.
Cool. Okay. Hell yeah.
And what I would say probably 50% of our business is aggregate. So we sell conveyors, rock crushers, cones. We do a lot of that stuff. So out of our other branches, the Canadian guys, that's all their business up there.
Is all the aggregate bases, or
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know you guys were in Canada. That's cool.
Yeah, we've got 2 stores up there. They do, like the ice road trucker shows. They got that all the time. Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, they do a lot of cool stuff up there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Luke, I know we've and Ryan, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we've had tons of questions about, somebody new starting out. Do they buy new? Do they rent? Do they buy used? Do they, scour Facebook Marketplace? Like, let's say I come in, I've got 50K and I want to start a business. Like, what questions do you ask me? But also, how do you determine what the right plan is for somebody like me? Because I'm assuming you're trying to help them make the best decision possible, whether that's with you guys, with somebody else, or new used. So just curious on what your thoughts are there.
The biggest question I always ask on a guy like that is what's the sole purpose of the machine? What are you going to do? That tells me a lot of, if it's a dozer that he's going to put 1,200 hours a year on, or is he going to put 200 hours a year on? And that's a big question to have asked there. As far as new and used go, a big question on the new is, do you want to have warranty and do you want financing? On a used piece, you're going to go to the street rates for your banking, and then the warranty piece, we'll do our darndest to get all the things we can, but it's not always going to happen. So, and that's where that rent to own piece comes in, because guys will rent it for 3 months, get the kinks worked out at the expense of us, and then they got a good machine. So, but to be honest with you, it comes down to what the guy does for work. I ran underground crew back when I was in college, so I kind of understand that business. So uptime's a big thing there. But if you're stripping basements and doing or digging basements and stripping lots, you probably don't need a brand new dozer and excavator for that. You know what I mean?
Those, yeah. Who'd you run with for your underground crew?
MIC.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Which they're not around anymore, but
but I heard of them, or I have heard of them.
Yeah, so we did a lot of sewer underground lift station type work, but it was development, kind of like what Dakota does.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Cool. Do they run any Komatsus?
Jeff bought a 71i from us last year, and he bought a D85.
Good for him. Hell yeah. Now to get him into some of the PCIs. So
yeah, I'm working on it.
There we go. One thing that we didn't really touch on, Luke, is kind of like the service side of it. Ryan, I know like with our excavators, if there's a service due, you guys come out to the field and physically service them. Walk us through that a little bit, because that was completely new to me, to where if we had a service, we had to be, if we had a service due, either we had to perform it or it had to go back to Butler, and then Butler would be like, I should, and this is just how they operated. Like, hey, we can maybe get to you in 2 to 3 weeks type thing, to where when you guys are like, nope, don't worry, let us know where the machine is. We'll be right out there. That was very new. When did that, is that a Komatsu thing? Is that a general thing? Like, where did that come from?
So a lot of the expense in these machines, everybody looks at the price and wow, but it gets back to showing the customer what he's actually paying for. And included in every machine is a 3 or 2,000 hour maintenance program included in the price. You can choose to pay for more, but it's all included in every new machine. And if that machine gets sold within that window, the next Komatsu dealer in that territory still takes care of it. So what happened was, back in the oil boom, guys were coming up from Texas and Mississippi, and we were getting calls to do all these services for all these machines from down south. That's a Komatsu thing, and we're responsible to cover that. So that's something they invest in. They provide all that oil filters and everything to us, and then we go do the service. And it's an out of territory machine. It doesn't matter. It's a Komatsu deal. So
it's just because it's Komatsu based, you represent Komatsu. That is your job to help support that machine, basically.
Yep. And the idea behind it is, so for the first 2,000 hours, that machine is covered by a Komatsu dealer. So if there's a second user of that machine, that's pretty valuable information for that next buyer, saying, hey, the local Komatsu guy took care of this for 2,000 hours. That's going to be a darn good machine. We know the samples are all good. Here's all the samples to look at. Let's buy that. Yep. So that's a big deal for us.
No. What's expected machine life out of say a 210?
I mean, with these new emissions and stuff, it's different because you got to change out these filters and burn them out. But the recommendation for the first filter burnout is 4,500 hours, and the second's 9,000. But now we're getting told that if there's no issues with the machine, to keep running them. And we have some that are close to 11, 12,000 hours, and they're running fine.
Sweet.
So we're doing overheads on our WA500 engines at about 15,000 hours, and they're pulling. Trans Systems is cycling those out at about 25,000 on the hours. So it can just depends on how you take care of it, how you run it. It'll last forever if you change oil in it.
Yeah. You had mentioned showing what you pay for up front. How do you show somebody that instance up front, right? How do you show somebody like, hey, we'll take care of your service, right? Because I don't think I would have understood it unless I physically, we had that interaction. Like, don't worry, we're sending somebody out. It's on us type thing. How do you show that up front?
Well, a couple things. So there's brochures and stuff you can look at, and it shows this is what we're going to do for maintenance. This is what we're going to do for warranty. Breaks it all out, what covers what. That's a big piece of selling the machine up front, is showing that information. Mm-hmm. And then doing the oil changes when they're recommended. You can show an example of like a machine that you had done an oil service on, and kind of show the history of how it broke down in the past. That's a big way to do it, I guess. I guess it comes down to showing the customer all the information that, that the machine would have on it. So,
yeah. So if I were, say I'm a new customer, and I'm a cat guy, and I am looking at a new dealer, new equipment, what are some of the key things that you would tell me? Hey, this is why, this is Komatsu, this is what we represent, this is what we're here for type thing.
So you probably I don't know if you know this, but all the Komatsu machines have contracts for life. So that's a system that basically you can set up to view your machine from your mobile device or your computer, and it will report anything you want to see on it. So it'll tell you coolant's low. It'll show you how much fuel's in it, where it's at, which operator's in it. If it's running in autos, how much per day it's running in autos. So that's pretty powerful information, and that's free for you. And if you got a used machine, you still have access to that. So we're syncing that with a lot of other manufacturers, brand or other brands of systems, because customers they have all different manufacturers. And that's getting to be a big thing now, is reporting of their machines and the health.
Okay.
And everybody's doing it together now. So you can take a 349 and throw it into the Komatsu system and still view some data out of it.
Really?
Yep.
Does that show like fuel burn? Does that show,
absolutely
automatics like that? Okay.
Big how hard you're working the machine. Because the reason why they do this is because then they can say, if you got a warranty claim on a machine and it's, because of high idle, they can look at it and say, you idled your machine 80% of the day.
Yeah.
For 2 months, we're not paying for that. that's an example, but
Yeah, well, that makes sense because a big thing for us right now, just in where we're at with business, we're trying to figure out all of our utilization rates. So we're
Yeah.
taking our fuel burn, we're taking our total hours within a 8-month, 7-month time frame. And there's formulas that give us like how many hours you need to put on that machine for it to make sense to purchase to where it makes sense to basically rent. And for instance, we're looking at a new dozer, Luke, right? And Ryan sent us some options on are they, the DXIs?
the PXI.
The PXIs. So a PXI
Yep.
61 dozer, right? So we actually plugged option one, I'll call it, into our utilization rate calculator, put purchase price, put what it cost to rent, all of that stuff in, and it was like this. It was like, do not rent this machine, buy it at that price. So it was really cool to see that. And you factor in your fuel burn, it gives you like an hourly cost rate, an hourly, rental rate. So that's, kind of how we're making a lot of our decisions going forward is from that calculator.
Luke, is that from, you think, a combination of rental prices being so high and maybe it being more favorable to purchase, or is that just from the utilization of the equipment?
Well, so it's the utilization of the equipment based off of the rental rates and the
Mm.
purchase prices. So I think it both kind of comes into a
Right.
factor of like what makes the most sense because Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but your rental rates are kind of established on machine prices and what it would cost what it would cost you to own that machine and then plus some obviously for the rental side for wear and tear and your overhead and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, you take a percentage of the total price of it as if it were new.
Yeah.
And then I think it's I don't know, what is it, 5%, 4% or something of the value. And that's, so when you're renting it, it's also taking the price of that machine and bringing it down.
Yep.
So you don't get stuck with a way overpriced machine that's got a bunch of rent with nothing off of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But
that's a good question too, Luke. So purchase prices kind of affect the rental rates then, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. Cause we got, you're trying to keep a tech involved in that price and then we make money. Well, I shouldn't say that we don't, the shops make money off of rental units as well because they're going out and doing the services. So that's all figured into that price from a dealership's perspective. Plus the interest gets thrown on there. So you got all these numbers. But for you, Luke, for running your contract system now, you can, ballpark your hours a year you're going to run on that, and then you're figuring out you're putting your fuel in there and you're putting your guy in there every hour, right?
Yep.
To figure out that value.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it was cool. Cole shared it with me, but for our utilization rate to basically the amount of hours that we would have to put on it in a year for it to make sense for us to buy it was like 650 hours.
Geez, that's easy to do for you.
Absolutely. So I was like, hell yeah,
Yeah.
because there's weeks where it's just constantly moving. So, but yeah, obviously there's highs and lows and rain days and whatever else, but it was just cool to see that. And if anybody out there's, on the fence of what to do, find a utilization calculator. Try to figure out your fuel burns, try to figure out all that, and that'll really help you make a decision. And obviously, Ryan, having that data behind it is really important.
Yeah, I'll have to run a report for you on your 210s, and I can show you how, it's pretty interesting what they show. And I can even break it down to when it was running in autos, which is really cool to see.
That would be cool. It'd be cool to see that time spent in autos and then the time spent without. And, that can help with the bidding process as well. Where were we most effective on? Where were we kind of guessing and things
Absolutely.
like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Luke, and to even double down on that too, I feel like, and this is for anyone, it'll help keep your team more accountable too, because once this is just simply knowing your numbers and knowing, are you utilizing the equipment at an effective and efficient rate? And so I feel like that kind of holds everyone a bit more accountable as well.
It does. I think you got to have those processes in place and kind of that standard and expectation of this is why we're doing it. Here's the reasons, here's the outcomes, and everyone kind of has to be on the same page for that. But no, good point. Good point. No.
It was kind of interesting this year too, because the winter has been so mild. Guys worked a lot more. So dealerships up here run quite a bit different than dealerships down south because they run all year.
Yep.
So when they look at selling a machine, they're looking at 1,200 hours for the year, and we're looking at it for 6 months. So it's a way different way to run a business up here, and they look at us like we're nuts. But that's just the way it is.
There are
But
some.
we got to experience a little bit of that this year because of the weather.
We did.
So,
We did.
yeah.
And I'll be honest, I know there's guys on our end that are like, give me the fucking time off. Like, where's my winter? And I'm like, well, Mother Nature said you didn't get one this year. So that's been interesting to navigate. But yeah, for 1,200 hours for somebody down south to here, I mean, it's crazy how, I don't want to say how much harder we push, but there's a lot more urgency on our end because we do get shut down at different times, and start dates are who knows when. You know, I already know frost laws are on, and it sounds like they're not coming off until middle to end of May at this point.
And that's where that Luke was talking about that, you know, what guy's going to buy what machine, new, used type thing. And that's where you got to ask those questions. You know, you get 7 months to work. What are you doing? And then what are your expectations? I mean, you're going to have breakdowns. It's just the nature of the business. And do you want those or not? Because we have a lot of customers, when that thing hits the end of the warranty cycle, that machine's coming back.
Yeah, getting traded.
Getting a new one. Yep. So, and it's because they need to be running. So it's just asking the right questions. Communication.
Absolutely. And I mean, from your standpoint, obviously you want to help that person too, because it's just a future business relationship on your end, to where you don't want to just brush them off and say, well, I don't really know. I don't know your business. It's cool that you ask those questions, and it's cool that you try to kind of understand that business to where, okay, here's where I can help you out the most.
Absolutely. And it's funny too, because it is a really small world.
It is.
And word travels fast. So that's all I got to say. You take care of one guy and you'd be surprised at how many people that touches.
100%. 100%. So anybody in the area of the Midwest, call General Equipment for your.
We're there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we got a lot of Canadian dirt bags too that are listening. So it's interesting though, that most of that's aggregate up there. Is that so can you dive into a little bit more on that? So like, do you stay in your lane when it comes to what you sell, or do you cross different divisions?
Yeah, it's pretty territory driven with what we can sell. Yeah. And then when you cross the border, then you got paperwork to do for that. And that's not so easy to do, but we represent Superior up in Canada. That's our main line. They're out of Morris, Minnesota. And they're getting into the cone business and job business now. So we sell a lot of their stuff up there. But down in the States here, we do it's pretty territory driven. We're a link belt dealer for cranes, and you know, that's a no-no in South Dakota, but North Dakota, we're the dealer. So it's, and our manufacturers keep us to that too. I mean, they're pretty loyal to their dealers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ryan, what are your thoughts on like autonomous equipment, and do you deal with it at all, or what are your just general thoughts there?
I think so. Komatsu's been running autonomous trucks down in some of the mines in Chile for years.
Yep.
And simple reason for that was because they couldn't get operators in there. I think they were trying to get them flying in or something. It was an access deal, but obviously that's 400-ton trucks running without operators is a little different than a 210. But I think it's going to get there. It's got a long ways to go. Everybody's kind of concentrating on this electric stuff right now, and I know we've got a 210 running around with electric on it, but it's, you know, send it up to Canada and let's see what it can do. So
wait till
it's a long way off. Sorry,
no, you're good. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of, like, it's cool. Like, you look at the Bobcats and you can run one with your phone. Like, yeah, that's super cool. But I would rather have somebody in the machine, because I feel like there's a lot more touch to it. And along with the electric side too, like you said, Ryan, send that up to Canada and let it freeze in the -20 and see how it performs.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm stuck in my old way. Maybe this is like the going to GPS and not going to GPS type thing, where, you know, maybe everyone will look back and be like, you're an idiot if you didn't do that earlier. And I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows?
The technology's there to do it. I can tell you that. I've seen it done on some machines, but to be honest with you, I think the negative to it is the the liability. You're going to have to fence up these job sites to keep people out, but somebody's going to jump the fence and get in there. And I mean, it's just so many things that aren't answered. So the technology is there to do it. They could do it right now if they wanted to, but I don't think it's going to happen for a while if it does. So
kind of a loaded question, and Luke, maybe you could chime in on this too. But from your perspective of the construction industry right now, what are some things that you think need to change?
Need to change.
Somebody like not fully, say, running a construction company, but very vested within the construction industry. Is it, I feel like, just in my head, thinking of COVID times, what are things that really skewed things during COVID to where maybe, like you said, the excavator market's getting a little bit harder right now. It's getting a little bit more competitive. Like, what are some things that you're noticing that, maybe you could give some advice on for people to be like, hey, be conscious of this or start looking out on this type thing?
So I guess from a purchasing standpoint on a machine, don't always look at the value of it and just go to, that's what I want because it's the cheapest. You really got to figure out, ask the right questions. A lot of these manufacturers are producing 3-4 different models of the same machine, and that's things that aren't on the machine. So it might be cheaper, but are you getting what you're actually wanting? So that's a big thing for us all the time. We fight that because, brand X is less money. Well, okay, if you were serious, you'd come back and say they're cheaper, but now let's figure out what the difference is. So that would be a thing I would warn on. That's the thing. That's the challenge with what we sell as a product is we're probably the most expensive out there, Komatsu, and it's for a reason. We've run the numbers on other manufacturers, and it's by the time you add this in and that in and that, you're not much different. So but just get the customer to understand that.
There's a stigma in the construction industry, and it is low bidder, baby. That needs to stop because I hate low bid basis.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, it is just going to come down to who can keep the thing running.
Yeah,
that's what it's going to be.
Yeah,
not going to matter what color paint it is. It's going to be who can keep this thing going for me so I can get it done. So that's just what I think.
Who's going to be there for you when you call? And
absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that's probably 85% of the importance.
I agree.
Luke, did I cut you off again? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I know we were talking before too, of just like you said, 85% service to manufacturer. Like what are your goals with working with the company? And we always say too, typically you want to work with the people behind the company, not just the company. And a lot of times it's the people at these dealerships that can make it happen for you, not just, that top level brand. Because I mean, just like working with a big bank, you feel like the local bank's got your back, and then you work with a big bank and, you're just a number. So making sure that you've got those good connections with these local dealerships, and if they can take care of you, that's the spot you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ryan, if you could give any advice out right now to anybody in the construction industry, what would that be?
Well, I would say working through local dealers and trust, build trust in them, and they're there to ultimately support you. They might not be the cheapest guy on the block, but just have trust in them and make sure that they have your best interest. And that's the way I would do business.
Absolutely.
Personally.
I'll put a twist on it here. So Ryan, same question. What piece of advice would you give somebody in their construction business, like from a business side? So not dealership or anything, but like any advice you've seen from anyone you've worked with, the ups and the downs, anything you could give as a piece of advice to them from a business sense?
Good question.
Well, I would not view your competition as a what am I trying to say?
As an enemy.
As an enemy, I would utilize them, and to be surprised, you'd be surprised at what information they would share with you to help you be successful. And I would highly recommend talking to those guys and and figuring out what they do different than you, and maybe you can utilize that in some of your business practices. And at the end of the day, everybody's out to make this a go. And I think people need to realize that more, that it's all everybody doing the same thing, and we're all in the USA.
US of A, baby. Hell yeah,
Let's
good
go.
advice. Good
Yeah,
advice.
dude.
Don't make enemies in this
Yeah.
world. Like you
Oh,
said,
and-
the world is way too small.
Ryan, I love that too, because and we've talked about it before, of just a lot of times there are companies out there doing work that they don't want to be doing. And so if you're hungry, you can just call them up and ask them, be like, hey, this is what I do. If there's anything I can help take off your plate, let me know. And they may say like, yeah, you can have these projects, go at it. But then you're at a different stage of business where that's money to you, that's business, that's opportunity. And then you crush it. And then you might have that next person give you a call and say, hey, do you have anything you don't want? So just continuously building those relationships can be huge. And yeah, not viewing your competitors as the enemy, but also still having that competitive advantage, I think is also important.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, he might someday want to be involved with you, or you with him, or it just, you never know what could happen in the future.
Luke, I
So-
will say, to your point, yes, don't make enemies in the construction space. But when it comes to bidding time, you bet I'm putting the gloves on, and it's war. Until it's awarded, I'll shake your hand after and we'll be good. But when we're bidding, like, it's different in that world, because you are competing, right? But I feel like there's a lot of hate and a lot of haste towards other companies just because they do the same services. That's not how I view it. I just want to beat you in the bidding process. But then after that, I'll go to Southtown Poorhouse at the end and have a beer. So
And that's exactly what I'm talking about there. It's just keeping that competitive edge. Like, don't lose that competitive edge as a business owner, because you need that, especially when you're bidding against others. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like sports. I see it like you want to beat the shit out of them. You want to win. And then after, we're going to shake your hand and go grab a beer. Like, that's how it should be.
yeah.
You see it all the time in the aggregate business. You see guys coming in that want to get into crushing, and that think they know it all, and they're going to go down a buck a ton to try and get all this business. Well, they're going to do that, but it's not going to last. And now they're not around, but the aggregates of the world they're there still. So it happens all the time.
One takeaway that being cheap is not good. Don't be fucking cheap.
No,
With equipment, with bidding, with coming into the industry, know your shit, or ask the questions.
Yeah, trust the people that have been doing it for a while, because they're there to help you.
And they're there for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for taking some time with us. Yeah, Luke, anything you got to add? Again, it was super fun conversation from my aspect, just because I get to know Ryan a little bit more and more, and get to dive into some of that. So
yeah, Ryan, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the insight. It's just really cool. Luke and I have talked about this before, just when we don't know the answer to something and we just get to ask the guest because we're genuinely curious. And then likely most of our audience listening is curious as well. So it's been really fun to just learn from you, ask you those questions, but also for you just to be so open and honest and transparent. We just can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having me. And anytime you want to talk again, just let me know.
I'll be in tomorrow. Sounds good.
There you go. Slap the microphone on the desk.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
No,
Good
it's been
talking with
fun.
you. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Okay. Thanks, guys.